Today is Thursday, August the 1st of 2024, and welcome to episode 107 of Rural Reliance with the Canny Couple. I'm Julia.
And I'm Aaron.
We're a small homestead family in rural Southwest Virginia that work every single day to be more self-reliant, merging homesteading and frugality.
Yeah, so today's something that has been on our minds a lot lately.
It is, and it's something that we are struggling with currently that we didn't really realize we needed to address, and that is seasons of growth and maintenance on the homestead. So, every homestead has a seasonal rhythm, and a lot of this is weather dependent.
It is?
It is very much weather dependent, but there are things that we think we can do to make this a little bit easier, a little bit better. So, why is this important? If you're trying to grow your homestead to produce more for you, but you're in a maintenance mode, it becomes very difficult to actually do anything that revolves around growth.
Right. And right now, that is what we are dealing with.
Right, because we are trying to grow our homestead, to build up our infrastructure, to build our homestead to the way we want it built. So we are more functional as a family, as a unit, as a homestead, and to make it work better for us. And right now, we're still kind of stuck in the season of maintenance. It's just what's really in our day-to-day right now. We're noticing it, especially now that I'm home full-time, because it's like we see, like, there's still not, we've made traction,
We have.
but we're not making the traction we want to make.
Right. And a lot of it is because we were so far behind from last year. The 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 time some of this stuff would have been done would have been done in other parts of the year.
Absolutely. So we're trying to maximize our time because there are going to be seasons where you can't really do anything. So let's first define a season of maintenance. So seasons of maintenance, and this is in our area. You have to think, we're looking at zones. Your area, you might be completely different. Like a growing season in Florida is very different from ours.
Right. You might either have more winter, more cold time, or more summer conditions for longer growing seasons. It all depends.
So for us, maintenance is spring and summer. So first of spring, I could kind of ramp up and get a lot of work done. But then after that, I feel like all I'm doing is weed eating. I'm weeding, I'm tying, I'm doing all of this extra work.
To keep the areas cleared down.
Yep, and we have to because of ticks and things like that. So we have to find a way to get around that.
Which have been really bad this year for us.
So it's like once you get the garden in, I feel like at that point, all I'm doing is maintaining everything. And that's not where we want to be. We
want to continuously grow.
Yeah.
We want to not be in that maintenance, but grow our infrastructure. I know there's going to be a point in time where
we're grown.
Where we're grown, where we don't go any farther from a homestead perspective, but there might be other areas we grow in at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. But we still have a long ways to go before we're fully maxed out capacity wise on the homestead. We have a whole area that we've not touched because we're not quite sure what we want to do with it yet. We've been really slow to deciding how we want to develop this area because we want to make sure we're doing what's really right for our family.
Well, it goes into right now, could we add something on?
We couldn't.
See, that goes into the perspective of it would be something else to maintain. It would be something else that we can't fit into the day-to-day right now. So which one of those works best? Well, we got to figure out some other stuff first.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are we maintaining? So canning, cutting, tying up vines, making sure they stay tied.
And vines, she means berry vines.
Berry vines. Or the hardy kiwis because they go crazy.
Yeah.
Gathering, that's taking up so much more of our time than we ever thought it would.
We knew it was
not
going to get
so soon.
Well, right. We didn't think it would happen so soon. So usually on average we're spending an hour a day on
that was when we're heavy production
on gathering.
Weeding, cooking, cleaning. These are all part of the homestead. This is all part of our day to day. We have to keep a decently clean home, make sure that we're living in a safe environment, and I could feed the people. Raising animals, the chickens have to be maintained, taken care of. Checking trees and berries for fruit production if we need to cover them. This is kind of where we have failed this year.
Definitely.
We've gotten a little bit better in some areas, but we've failed in others, so we've got to kind of work through that. We just need to find ways where half of this is sort of taking care of itself.
Right. And this sort of goes into also, a lot of homestead families have a lot of people that are involved in the homestead day to day, helping with very specific chores. We do not. It's just us two right now. Our little one is not of the age where
she's little. She's
right,
she's two. She's two. She's a toddler.
And
I know a lot of people have their toddlers out doing that. We're not at that point. We're just not. And that's okay. And that's 100% okay. We're not ready to give her chores on the homestead.
Right.
But we also know she will grow up and leave the homestead. So we don't want to rely on a person to do the chores.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a hot ticket. It's a bit of a hot take on that because we look at it a lot differently. We have to be able to manage this homestead. Yes, she's going to work and help us, but it's help, not managing. That is on us because this was our decision. This was us who took it on. And not only that, when she leaves, we need to be able to take care of it.
Exactly. I mean, if we put something on her to maintain, to do constantly, okay, if she decides to leave this area afterwards, who's picking that up? Do we have to hire somebody? I mean, that's what you've got to think about.
It's a real concern.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right now we're kind of like in a season of frustration.
Mm-mm.
It's not just maintenance; it's frustration. I could see it in Aaron. He's like, you need to focus somewhere else. You need to do something else. And it's he's not being mean about it. He sees we're not making progress.
Yeah.
But we know we need to get these tasks done because ticks are very bad. Like, we've never had ticks just walking around our house, but we're having ticks walking around our house. So we know we have to maintain and keep all of this.
We're talking about like after we come in from doing our stuff outside in these areas around the house.
Yes, because we've tried to keep a lot of our berry area, so it's kind of like we can make a loop around.
Zone 1.
About zone 1, zone 2, and some.
Mm-hmm.
And because we can make the loop around, we're noticing that like Aaron's getting a tick or two, and we've got to keep these areas cut. So our goal here is to make this a much shorter season of maintenance, or to cut the maintenance in half so we can focus that extra time on growth in a side hustle, growth in our home, growth in the homestead. Maybe I get an extra day to work on a project on the homestead and then an extra day to work on side hustle stuff.
Right.
That's kind of our focus here, because it feels like our progress sort of stops once the garden goes in. Like, we get the garden in, our progress is like, okay, now all we do is maintain, and we're not getting anything done.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
And I think this is really frustrating for him. It's frustrating for me, but I also know these jobs have to be done. Because if they're not done, we end up in a bigger mess than what we were in before. Or, we might disagree about what's priority. I don't want to walk in a foot of high grass. I mean, that's just not something I want to do. I don't want to get into ticks and anything. So I will focus on weed eating. He'll want to focus on something else. So it's just one of those things we have to deal with. But we are looking for ways to change this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more Aaron. He's coming up with some things that we're looking at to maybe automate and make a little bit better on our homestead.
Yeah, we're always looking for ways to automate as much as we can, or let nature do its own thing, so we can focus some of our energy in other specific areas.
So next year I'm going to I talked about it this year. It didn't happen this year, but next year we're going to be using clover in the garden really heavy. I'm also thinking of putting in a leaf mulch system so I can mulch around our plants as well with some leaf mulch that is already in our garden area, and I can just pull it out and get it in there.
Which we did really well with the leaf mulch.
We do really well with leaves.
And we've got so many. So
It's nothing. It's just finding the time to actually go
Yep.
get a couple bags and start that process.
Yeah.
So that was new. I came up with that yesterday. He didn't know about
No,
that.
I
The
didn't know about
clover was the clover we've been talking about, and I think that will really help. Aaron is looking at possibly doing a hands-free lawnmower that we could program to go.
one of the robotic ones.
Yeah.
For these areas that she's having to maintain around some of the berry vines, etc. Seen one that's possibly an option.
If we can make it work,
Yeah.
that's going to be the problem. We have to see if we can make it work. If we can't, we got to figure out something
We'll
else
gotta
that can
come up
help.
with something else. Yep.
We got to come up with
Whether
another
it's
solution.
cardboarding that area and putting
Wood chips.
wood chips on top of it. Something.
Could be an option.
Right.
It's a lot of cardboard, but we will do it. We'll mulch it, and that
Yeah.
would take it again. That's another years-long process, but it would be worth it to lessen up our time. We might actually still need to do that around the honeyberries and stuff where behind the chicken coop.
Yeah.
Because that would be an area I would still have to maintain. We get that wood chipped off, be less work.
Right.
So, seasons of growth. For us, this is usually fall and winter. Now, winter, we're subject to weather. If it's super, super wet outside, we can't do anything. Can't do anything. You can't get out. You can't go. We have a bigger issue with water in the winter time.
We haven't had as much snow in past few years. It's
A
been
little bit
It's been more of a very wet
icy.
or icy winter. Yes.
Ice is the bigger concern. When you live in a mountainous area, snow isn't your concern. It's the ice that comes with the snow that becomes the concern because everything gets really slick.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do anything. So for us this year, we are projected to have a warmer winter, and we are going to maximize this
Yeah.
warmer weather.
But I don't know if I believe the weather forecast being in July for December.
We'll
saying.
see. We'll see. We're projected. I'm making plans now. Fall we can do a lot more growth. Our garden harvest isn't going to be as great as it was the previous year. We
No.
already know that.
Yeah.
We already see that. Okay, so let's make the most of this time that we're gonna have, and get the most that we can from our garden area. We're gonna get that built up. We're gonna get our duck coop done. We're just gonna make a lot of progress that we need to make.
Yeah.
And that's our goal. Progress. That's all I want to see. I want to see us moving forward and making progress on as much as we can in the amount of time that we have. And if we have a warmer winter, like we have times where we can actually get out and do a couple of hours of work on the weekends during the weekday or something like that, then we'll get out there and we'll do a couple of hours of work. But also utilizing those times to make progress on the eBay or other side hustles because it's cooler. I don't need to be outside maintaining, managing, weed eating.
Yep.
So we're really looking at this through a different lens, a different eyes. Would you have anything to add to that?
I mean, it's always hard to plan out what's going to happen in a year when you don't know what the weather's going to be like. For us, for this year, where we had the extremely
Hot. It kind of
hot weather,
tied us up.
it made us have to do more early morning and more late evening things, which less time outside during the hot part of the day to do things that we had done in previous years during the middle of the day. And at the same time, rain had been something that had, when it was happening before it got dry, it would only rain on the weekends when I was available to help with a lot of this type of stuff.
It's a struggle, and you have to find your rhythm. And for us, it's adjusting our rhythm. It really is. So that's why this is so important. We need to adjust our rhythm and we need to find ways and solutions to make our life work better, easier for us on a day to day basis. So we've talked about a few of those. So let's go through some more. How do we combat tying up berry vines? I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good question, because it's something that they grow. You think you've got them contained before spring starts. Spring starts, they grow.
Then fall,
Summer,
they grow
they
even
grow.
more.
So you have them continuously growing throughout that time period before the end of that season.
If you're not careful, it can take hours to remanage them.
Well, where you had to do those to begin with, they hadn't been managed.
They haven't been managed.
But
if you manage them, it could take like 20 to 30 minutes. It's a much easier process, a lot less time that you're actually spending maintaining, which is why it's something that I try to keep up with. I try to touch at least once a month to make sure they're in a good position. Now, the hardy kiwis, it's one where I really need to cut down some apple tree limbs because they keep growing in the apple trees, and I can't actually pull them out of them yet because it'll rip apples off the tree, and I'd like to have those in my canning jars, not the ground for the deer. Now, another thing we have to think of solutions for. All the trees we had to prop up this year.
We had a lot of trees that were overloaded with fruit this year that...
This is going to be a fall project.
This is going to be something we have to come up with to better position ourselves when we do have a good crop. And from the perspective of there's a few other trees that we need to, prune some limbs off of or try to straighten up a little bit more this fall for next year so that we don't run into these sort of issues.
These are all things that we're looking at, and they'll save us time going further. So I think we are in a season of maintenance. Maybe not maintenance. What's the right word for this? Maybe a season of correctiveness.
Correctiveness. That's a good one.
I don't know what else to call it. We need to correct a lot of issues that we have on the homestead that are taking up a lot of our time. I can't tell you how much time we have spent in our garden this year trying to make it critter proof.
We
ate up so much of my time. I was not supposed to be doing the inside of the garden fencing until fall.
Yeah.
And here I am putting part of the fencing up in the inside of the garden, not even all of it, because of the weather or because of the critters.
Yep.
That took so much time. But now we have an even deeper amount of critter proofing we have to do.
Correct. We've sort of learned, some things about the way that groundhog did get in, or it did get in from, that we weren't prepared for anything coming that way in. So now we have to think of, okay, we want to be able to get into these areas still, but also zone it off.
I think I have an idea. I've not told him about it because it's still in my head, and I need to kind of get it to a way to...
Until she draws it.
It's how I try. He's not going to understand. But it's still kind of in my head. But we have to really kind of combat this and figure out a way to do it. And that's, again, a really big project for fall, is making sure our garden is as critter proof as we can make it. Once we get that done, I feel like we'll be light years ahead, and that will help us for next year. So it's a lot of corrective measures that we're having to take that are going to save us time in the long run and take away our season of maintenance, because right now we're just putting in small fixes where we can. I need to stop the small fix mode. I need to jump into let's start pushing and building and making things better mode.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely agree. And she's been right about from the perspective of, I feel like we're in a rut, you can say right now, of just the maintenance, and we're not seeing that growth.
And it's frustrating because you want to start moving forward.
Yep.
And I know, like right now, we're in a hot part of the year, and we're about to hit my fruit canning season, and there's nothing we can do then.
No.
I mean, it's fruit canning, and that's what it is. It's going to take up my evenings. It's going to take up my days, and it's just is what it is at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to deal with that, because I pushed off as much fruit canning as I can. I have packed our freezers, but our fresh fruit for our apples and our peaches and pears, I can't put those in the freezer.
No.
I don't have room.
No, that too.
I don't have room. But we could always plug up the other one if we had to, and I could always bum freezer space from somebody if I needed to. I'd find a way. But that's not the problem. They just don't. They wouldn't can as well. Free. At least I don't. I've never heard of them canning well. Apples maybe. But I doubt it. And so we're
make applesauce.
Make applesauce. She'd rather just have the apples that are just puree, and it's more versatile for us. But we're just hitting these seasons, and it's frustrating because we don't feel like we have any momentum. Now, we knew canning season was coming, and we knew what this would look like.
August, September is always pretty much food preservation months.
And January and February are going to be too. Like, we already know that. We've talked about that. We are aware we've got to get all the freezers emptied out from all the fruit from before. So we're really going to be focusing on that this winter. But how do I make sure everything else that needs to happen is happening? That's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having to make sure I'm making time for all of that. And there's only so many hours in the day for me to do all the work that I need to get done. So we need to automate some house cleaning. That's some of the stuff we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need to make sure that the floors are staying clean. We need to make sure that the bathrooms can stay clean. All of these things need to happen because that's part of running a household. Yeah. And so we're looking for ways to make those things a little bit easier and take less time, because if I use less time cleaning the house, that's more time I could put towards other efforts on the homestead or towards Isabel.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, because so it's just it gets frustrating, and I keep saying that word because I think it's where we are. I think it's where we are. We call it a season of maintenance, but I think right now because we are wanting to push and we want to do all of these things, and we just feel like we can't.
Yeah, yeah. So as you heard us talk in the last week episodes, our goals. As you see, a lot of those goals, if you listen to the ones at the beginning of the year, haven't happened yet.
No, they're still planned. Like, we don't have water, setups in our garden. That's still planned. We'll have a water setup in our garden. Mm-hmm. And, it's not going to help us this year, but it's going to help us next year. Exactly. So the goal is to make it so next year we have more time to work on infrastructure. That's got to be our goal. We need to have better processes, systems in place to focus on our infrastructure on the homestead, because we need to make decisions about, we're doing the front yard food forest. We've not even touched that project, and we know that's a long, hard project. It's, so much work.
And it needs to be sowed in clover or red Clemson clover or something before that even starts.
Right, just to start helping prep the soil. We're going to start prepping that soil, get it ready. We also need to do the fields. That's another project. So next year's probably going to be sowing the fields and things like that. I need Aaron not to have to worry about all this other stuff while we're trying to do all that. Mm-hmm. It becomes overwhelming when you think about it this way. And you can almost feel like your entire year is a season of maintenance, except for early spring. Like February, when you start doing your seed starts.
Yeah, especially even winter too, depending where you live. It might be having enough firewood, cutting the firewood, making sure you have the firewood, or making sure you have the meat in the freezer for the spring, depending where you live.
See, for me, I want to use my winter time to get us ready for our summer and spring months, because I don't want to heat the house up cooking. But I also want to make sure I can put away enough snacky foods that we like to eat. We could put away all of our fruit leathers, all of the stuff I can have ready in my pantry, stocked full of all this good stuff that we had from the year before. But at this point, I don't know how much time I'm going to have for all of that.
I know. And it's coming up a lot of times. You're just like, well, it's the day-to-day of homestead. Well, there are ways to improve it. It's better processes, better ways of coming up with ideas to maintain this, or some people might be bringing more people on to help with this type of stuff.
The problem is our day to day is starting to get so overwhelming. Like, we need it to be one person can manage it, because if I'm down, he has to manage it. If he's down, I have to manage it. So we have to make sure it's manageable for our weakest person. We've had those seasons. We have. When you had your surgery, when we had Isabel,
Yep.
Stuff didn't happen.
Nothing happened.
When I break a toe,
yeah,
that happens.
when I break a toe,
you can't. I mean, you can't go and do it. You can't go manage and handle it. So you have to find ways around it. So we're really looking and being very diligent and really looking for ways to automate a lot of these little tedious jobs. And I would say the biggest one for us is going to be the weeding in the garden, and some of just the basic maintenance that we have to maintain.
Yeah, and from the garden perspective, it might be the cardboard method that we do there. It might be the clover method we do there. We don't
I'm
know.
leaning towards clover.
Right. I mean, we know that there has to be something else done there, just from the perspective of when the way the weather hit this year, it was very wet, then turned very hot. Well,
and
then
dry.
by the hot and dry, by the time that hot and dry hit, we tried weeding at that point some of those areas, and it killed off some of the plants because the weeds were protecting them from that hot sun. Downfalls, stuff like that happening. The weed eating, as she mentioned there, that is what we do to keep around all of our berry bushes, around all of our trees. And as you've heard us say, we have a lot of trees and stuff. Just maintaining some of this stuff has been very challenging, because
between our fence rows.
Right.
And
yep, because it's something that we used to do before we had the little one. We would spend
about a weekend,
both of us, all weekend a month is what we would do.
A weekend a month.
Yeah.
I would weed eat. He would go around each of the trees. We've not done that in a couple of years. It's something we were hoping to get done this year.
Yeah.
It's not manageable.
It just hasn't happened.
It's not manageable.
Yeah.
So we know we have issues that we need to find a solution for.
Yep.
So we're looking for solutions. And if you have any solutions, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear them. If there's such thing as a tying machine that's not the manual one that I absolutely adore, I would be willing to look at that.
Yeah. I mean, the tying machine you do use, though,
it does help.
It helps a lot.
It helps a lot.
Stuff like that, anything to take off 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of your time. It's something that you always can think about, because then you can grow your homestead more. You can grow your day-to-day processes more from the perspective of, okay, I have 30 more minutes now. What can I put that time and energy toward?
I can do a lot with 30 minutes.
She can.
I can do a lot with 30 minutes. And it's finding those 30 minutes.
Yep.
And it really is. I can do a lot in an hour or 2 hours. I mean, I can nail out so much stuff in 2 hours that it's not even funny. But it's finding the time for those 2 hours. So one of the things that we're looking at for weeding, this is another idea I had, was to make sure we're solarizing our raised beds. Whenever February comes and that sun starts peeking through and it gets hot, we get those beds good and wet. And then I'm going to take, because of the size of the beds, I'm going to get some clear plastic shower curtains. And we are going to clip them to the outside of the bed. I think it's the perfect solution. It's a lot cheaper than buying one of those huge big plastic rolls for what I need to do. And it'll fit those beds perfectly. And that will help a lot. That will help a lot on the weeding, because we do get a lot of weeds in those beds because of where they grow. And just in general, we can grow weeds better than we can grow food some years. I mean, I hate to be that way, but I feel like a lot of times the weeds grow better than the food. It feels like you're in a jungle. I've got tomato plants, and the weeds are taller than the tomato plants in one bed, but the tomatoes are still doing it. They're still doing their thing. And the type of weed it is, if I pull them out,
it's going to pull the tomato
pull the tomato plant. So that's one of the things that we're looking to do next year. I don't care to put the work in on the front end.
Right.
I can spread that out throughout the whole winter season and the fall season. Like my leaf mulch area that I'm thinking of putting in our garden, I can take an hour every single week or 2 hours, and it probably won't even take that long for 6 to 8 weeks, and I can build that up
Oh yeah.
and put another one somewhere else. I can do that and spread out the pain of that throughout the months instead of having to be forced to do it all at one time. Kind of like what we do for the potatoes. Leaf mulch worked just as good as the grass clippings.
It did. It did.
And I want to get twice as much up there for the potatoes to help push that forward. I will look for tools to make it easier on myself because I'll be the only person doing it.
We've seen a couple of things.
Because it makes sense. When it's one person doing it, you have to think about it that way because typically it's a two-person job. Now we need to make it into a one-person job. What tools do we invest in to make it go easier and faster and it's more efficient for one person? So it's just finding your seasons. Look for your seasons of growth and maintenance. We are trying to extend our seasons of growth. We want to push our growth forward and not growing food. We're talking about growing our homestead. Because if we started a big project on the part of our property that is not developed at this point, we wouldn't have time to maintain it or manage it because we're doing all this other stuff. So we want to make sure we're growing ourselves the way we need to.
Yep. Creating those extra hours, minutes that can help bring about a lot of changes on the homestead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It could be something that's producing income. It could be anything that's going to help push us forward in our goals. Like right now, if we had a high tunnel, there would be no way I could maintain a high tunnel with everything else that we're having to maintain. Yeah. There's just no way.
Right. And you know, that's something you've heard us mention before in this place. And we were just talking about this like earlier today and saying, you know, if we had that high tunneler out there now, where would we have time to maintain that at in the day?
Nowhere. I wouldn't.
Nowhere.
I wouldn't. We've got to find ways to manage it. At this point and in this season of the year, we are realizing that maintenance is overtaking our ability to grow.
And when we get in these areas like this, this is when we do some of our best thinking.
It is.
Because last year at this time, this is when we came up with the idea of bringing Julia home to help with some of this stuff. Okay? Now we've got our home. We've got other projects that we need to get moving on. So we've got to come up with solutions for those as well.
Yep. So we're going to work through it. And these are only going to make us better in the long run.
Yeah.
It's only going to make us better in the long run. It's going to make us so much more efficient in the long run is how we're looking at this. It's going to make us even better and allow us to grow our homestead even more. Just a couple of hours, where you have hands-off activity it's insane. Yeah. It's insane how much you can get done in a couple of hours. A lot of people like money. A lot of people discount a couple of pennies in a couple of hours. Like, yeah, that's really not going to help you. It helps if you actually work it.
Right.
Like, you can't be scrolling TikTok. You got to actually get up and do something and work it. Mm-hmm. In a couple of hours, you can get a lot done. I try to make the most efficient use of my time. It's one of the things that I've really been pushing for and focusing on, and try to make sure I'm as efficient as possible and keeping us as, clean, keeping the home maintained and all of that, as well as I can, plus the homestead. And I won't lie, I fail in some areas, but I've excelled in others and pushed forward, and we are doing something. It's not like we're not making progress. Right. It's just we're not seeing progress as fast as we want.
Right. And, it takes a lot of hard work and sometimes creative innovations as well. So
thinking outside the box, I would have never have with the idea of automating the mowing. But he's my outside thinker, and it could be a really good option for us.
Right.
I mean, it could be, it could not, it might not be, but
Might not be. But this is one of the, for example, it's something that is revolutionized more every day. Like this one that we're looking at. Like I looked at this a couple of years ago. None of them would hardly go on anything but flat ground. This one goes on 80% incline. Okay, see how it's revolutionized in just a few years. So stuff like this, there's always people thinking outside the box on things that
if people use it, are
Mhm.
using this tool for the things we're talking about to
Yeah.
be able to garden more while this is doing the maintenance.
Right, the one I specifically read was talking about, oh, I'm able to cut around my orchard with this so I can spend more time in the garden.
It's like this might
Right.
be a good option.
Right. So, always think outside the box. Think of those innovative solutions.
This is Aaron's job on our homestead to think outside the box. My job is to find the problem. This takes too much time. Find me a solution.
Yep.
And he finds the solution that we try to make sure it works. I'm the one who puts holes in it. I look for the holes and why it might not work. And I think that frustrates him because he thinks he's found the thing that works. But I also, this is how we work frugally.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to make sure what investments we're making into our homestead are going to help us in the long run.
Well, if you got any comments, or innovative ideas,
Or are you in your season of frustration?
Right. You can either leave those down below or send it to thecannycouple@yahoo.com. And then make sure to go over and check out our link tree with all of our other content.
And as always, thank you for joining us on Rural Reliance with the Canny Couple, where we work hard, live simple, and enjoy life. Have a wonderful day.